We, the jury, find the defendant, Daniel Villegas, not guilty of...
This is the moment the courtroom in El Paso, Texas, erupted in cheers inside the 409th District Court as the judge delivered a verdict decades in the making. The man standing at the defense table had been tried 3 separate times, spending most of his life behind bars for a 1993 double murder he always said he knew nothing about. Each trial, each appeal, and every sleepless night carried the weight of a system that failed him. But when the judge finally pronounced him not guilty, the room exploded. After years of fighting, justice had finally reached Daniel Villegas. This is the chilling case of Daniel Villegas, wrongfully convicted at just 16 years old for a crime he knew nothing about. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button as we break down the decades-long fight for justice that was denied again and again. In April 1993, 4 teenagers were walking home from a party in northeast El Paso when a car pulled up beside them. Within seconds, 2 boys, 17-year-old Armando Lazo and 18-year-old Robert England, were struck by gunfire, while the other 2 ran for help. The community was shaken, pressure mounted on investigators, and police rushed to find someone to blame. Days later, officers questioned 16-year-old Daniel Villegas, a quiet kid with no history of violence. After hours of intense interrogation, Daniel signed a confession, one he would later say was forced, confused, and completely untrue. There was no physical evidence against him. Survivors could not identify the shooter, yet Daniel was charged with double murder. The case moved fast. A scared teenager suddenly found himself facing one of the most serious charges imaginable. In 1994, Daniel's first trial began. The prosecution leaned heavily on the confession he said was coerced. Witnesses couldn't identify a shooter. The story had major gaps. After days of testimony, the jury could not agree. A mistrial was declared, but the case didn't stop there. In 1995, prosecutors returned for a second trial, more aggressive, more determined. The controversial confession became the centerpiece of the case. Despite Daniel's age, despite the lack of physical evidence, and despite serious concerns about the interrogation, the jury convicted him of capital murder. At just 17 years old, Daniel was sentenced to life in prison. No one knew then that this conviction would unravel decades later. By the time the third trial began in October 2018, the arguments inside the 409th District Court were sharper, more detailed, and more intense than ever before. The prosecution opened by trying to rebuild a case without the original confession, now ruled inadmissible, arguing that circumstantial details still pointed toward Daniel. But without physical evidence, without eyewitnesses, and without the confession, their argument struggled to gain the weight it once carried. The defense, however, came prepared for a fight decades in the making. They argued that Daniel's original statement was the product of an aggressive interrogation on a frightened teenager who didn't fully understand what he was signing. They highlighted the inconsistencies between the confession and the actual crime scene, pointing out that key details didn't line up. They emphasized that the surviving teens never identified Daniel, and that no forensic evidence linked him to the shooting. Expert witnesses explained how false confessions can occur, especially in juveniles. Other witnesses presented information that had never been properly examined, raising questions about alternate suspects and the thoroughness of the original investigation. Every argument pointed toward one truth: the case against Daniel had never been solid. On October 2018, the day of the third trial, just hours before the jury delivered their verdict, Daniel Villegas stood outside the 409th District Court and once again emphasized his innocence when approached by a reporter.
This is, like you said, my life on the line. But, at the same moment, we're feeling confident. I'm innocent, and I've always said I was innocent way back since 1993. So I really feel like now that we have, Joe Spencer on the team and everybody else, and they work their butts off day and night.
It was an emotional moment inside the 409th District Court as Daniel Villegas sat quietly at the defense table, tears in his eyes, exhausted but still fighting for the truth. While out on bond, Daniel had tried to rebuild his life. He got married. He became a father. He tried to create the stability he'd been denied since childhood.
You know, I always think to myself, you know, is these going to be the last days I have with them? You know, is it going to be, you know, I'm going to wake up in October and on the 9th and then I'm going to be in a jail cell waiting to get shipped out to prison.
I think that nobody expects to find love the way we did.
What is the worst possible outcome for you?
Life sentence. Guilty. If I lose him, I lose my family.
In the courtroom that day sat the people who held his world together. His wife, trembling with nerves, and their young daughter wearing a shirt boldly reading, "Free my daddy." His wife's eyes were red from crying. She didn't know what the future held. Around them, the courtroom was packed. Family members, supporters, community leaders. Everyone waiting, holding their breath. This wasn't just a trial. This was a family's life hanging in the balance. Then came the moment. Judge Sam Medrano Jr. prepared to deliver the final verdict. The room went silent.
In the District Court of El Paso County, Texas, 409th Judicial District, the State of Texas versus Daniel Villegas, number 94-0D09328. Verdict Form B. We, the jury, find the defendant Daniel Villegas not guilty of...
For the first time in decades, Daniel Villegas was free. No more trials, no more accusations, no more being labeled a murderer. He could finally go home, hold his children, and rebuild the life that had been taken from him. A key figure in Daniel Villegas' journey to freedom was El Paso businessman John Mimbella. After learning about Daniel's case through family connections, Mimbella became convinced something was wrong. He personally financed investigators, legal experts, and attorneys to re-examine the evidence. He organized community awareness efforts, funded billboards, and worked tirelessly to bring attention to concerns surrounding the original confession and trial. His commitment lasted for years, driven by a belief that an innocent young man had been overlooked. Many credit Mimbella's persistence as a major force that helped bring Daniel's case back into court, ultimately leading to his exoneration. After his release, Daniel filed a federal civil rights lawsuit seeking accountability for the coerced confession that shaped his life and sparked one of Texas's most discussed wrongful conviction battles. His story has since become a national symbol of the urgency of justice reform. Do you think the justice system waited too long to correct this? If this happened to your family member, would you forgive the system or fight for accountability? Who do you think failed Daniel Villegas, the justice system or the police who accused him? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next video.